Anyway,
Perimenopause. Stress or thyroid?
yeah. Okay.
It's stress. How,
It's
dude,
stress.
guys, how could it not be freaking stress? Look at the world right now. Every right's getting taken left and right. Everything is every day. It's mass chaos. You guys think this is perimenopause just because you got a couple kids and you might be 35. But yo, guys, I think this is stress.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Stress and so on perimenopause related issues and questions every day, every
all the
week
time.
with our clients,
Yes.
right? Because of the demographic that we generally work with. And we get a ton of questions about perimenopause in general. So it's kind of like you ask, we answer. We love doing topical things. So we wanted to open the conversation to start talking about perimenopause because obviously you can't talk about perimenopause in one episode. I'm sure there are entire podcasts
Oh
that
my
talk
God, that
about
are literally
perimenopause
just
and
about it.
menopause. So
100%.
we wanted to start this off by talking about if you are getting targeted for this, probably means that you're within the age range of, hey, maybe it's perimenopause, maybe it's not perimenopause. We don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to talk about how do you know if you are in this range and if you're one of these people who's starting to question or whose providers are starting to question or push off symptoms as, oh, maybe this is perimenopause. Something to consider. We're going to talk about symptoms. We're going to talk about hormone levels. And we also want to do a little bit of a disclaimer here of this nor any of our episodes is with the intent to make you distrustful of the medical system, because I
No,
think there's a lot of that discourse going on right
we don't
now.
need any more of
And
that in the world.
right. And it is very easy to feel distrustful of certain organizations and let's say conglomerates right now. So this is more about if you feel like you're not being heard by your provider, here is how to advocate yourself, be armed with information, and potentially find a new provider, right? Because when you're going through the perimenopause transition or wondering if you are or if you're menopausal or postmenopausal, it's a very confusing time. And just like when you're first getting your period, you don't get a lot of information of what is this quote unquote supposed to look like, what this could look like for other people. This isn't really something that's very widely talked about unless you talk about that with your girlfriends or with your any other female figures in your life. So we want to bring some clarity and open the conversation. And we know there are going to be questions about this as well. Email us, message us on Instagram. You can obviously find us on Patreon. We're going to start digging into it.
I think one of the things too that I want to mention also is yes to everything you said, of course. I think one of the things too that is really hard right now, because it's hard to not mention the political climate of things, is that part of the reason that's going to make this more challenging moving forward is that there's already very limited research and understanding of female bodies in perimenopause and the various
Now you
different levels.
can't.
And now they literally aren't even funding stuff like that. And they're taking away that research so that people are becoming less informed. So it makes sense that you might be seeking out information in places where you're like, oh, is this right? Is this not right? And we want to help you by finding a source that could help you kind of discern what's real and what's not real. And I wanted to say that part of what like spawned this whole episode was that I was getting targeted with so much stuff. And I remember talking to my mom about it. And I just turned 40 in January. We're recording this in February. But I was talking to my mom about it a while ago, and I was saying something like, oh, I'm getting all these targeted ads for perimenopause, and I was feeling kind of like low energy. My body was changing. I didn't really know what was going on. I'm like, what is happening? I was having like weird joint issues and all kinds of like weird stuff, all kinds of weird symptoms. And I remember saying to my mom very casually one day, I wonder if maybe this is perimenopause. And my mom said, don't even say that. And I remember saying, Mom, why? And she said, that is the new female hysteria diagnosis. She goes, everybody's in their mothers getting diagnosed with perimenopause, and most of the women that are getting diagnosed with perimenopause are women with young children who are working like crazy, who have all this stuff going on. And she was saying when she was growing up, if you were stressed or overwhelmed in any way or anything was happening, you were diagnosed with having female hysteria. And she was like, that's like the new thing. that doesn't necessarily, it's a very extremist, like very protective mom vibe that came on from her, but I really appreciated it at the time because it was really easy to be able to say maybe something's wrong with me versus, oh no, there's something in the system like this. We've seen this before in history where this is happening. And my mom was like, I just really think that you like you don't have enough of the things to make it seem like you're actually headed towards menopause. She's like, that'd be really unlikely to be the scenario. And so she was like, I just want you to know that how you're feeling is how lots of women have felt long before you. And they were told different things. And a lot of it, she was just saying, you have two young kids. Life is overwhelming. There's a lot going on in the world that's overwhelming. And so it was really helpful for me for her to be like, wait a minute, Christina, you're getting a lot of ads. Of course, you're feeling like maybe this is me. Maybe this is the answer to some of the stuff that's been going on. And her response was really helpful for me to be like, wait a minute, am I just getting targeted and I'm being sold all this stuff? And now I'm wondering if it's real or not. And I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah, well, the other thing to keep in mind is like how smart these algorithms
Oh
are,
my
right?
gosh, so
So
crazy.
one thing that I always try to keep in mind for me and for you and for other practitioners is that we are constantly looking things up, looking up different studies on behalf of our clients. So whether that's like a very rare autoimmune disease, of course, perimenopause resources, we're looking for people to give more resources, give more information and other stuff like that. So then you start to wonder, and I see this directly, right? Because I will be researching things that have nothing to do with me, and then I'll get targeted products and ads and stuff for it on Instagram and other places. And I'm like, whoa, I Googled this one time and now I get 27 ads about it. But so that's something to think about as well, is even if you had a question of, oh, is X a symptom of perimenopause? Even if you have no inkling whether or not you are in perimenopause, you might start getting ads for that. So in terms of like
Also,
information literacy, just something to keep in mind.
Also, too, the another thing too to remember too is so many of these types of symptoms that are elusive or not like tangible are associated with a lots of different things. So it's really easy for 1 minute to be reading something and say, oh, this is clearly thyroid related or like whatever it is. And then you like read something else. Oh my gosh, that's clearly like dairy allergy related. And it's like you read this other thing. Oh my gosh, that's like this perimenopause thing. Like, oh my God, I have Cushing's syndrome. And it's
Yeah.
all these different things. A lot of the symptoms are fast reaching with multiple different things. And I think sometimes too, if you can take something or one or two things on a symptom list or in a targeted ad that you really identify with, it can make you really feel like you're going through this experience when really it might be just these things happen, these symptoms happen when lots of stuff are happening. And so it might not be any one of those things. It could be like, yes, and like lots of different things all happening at the same time. So I think it's really important to get some education about what is perimenopause. Do we even know what perimenopause is? What is the, like, how do we define it? What are the symptoms? How do we even have a proper identification of this? And these are the things that we want people to hear and know about because I think a lot more of us are getting targeted for this type of thing and wondering if this is what is impacting us. And that doesn't mean that your symptoms aren't real or valid or need to be addressed. It just
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that this is the thing that's doing it always.
Yeah. And it's really easy to fall into one confirmation bias with perimenopause and then to feel like, oh, this is definitely the thing that's going on. If you have something that you suspect confirms it, right? So let's say, because I've seen this happen before, is you suspect that you're having these types of symptoms that you think might be related to perimenopause. And so then you get some supplement off of wherever. This is no shade. This just happens all the time, right? It's some kind of hormone balancing supplement, right? And if that makes you feel better in any way, you're like, oh, that seems like a confirmation to me that it was my hormones that were out of balance. Therefore, maybe it is perimenopause, right? So that's one thing that happens. And that's not to say that product didn't work for you. And that's not to say that it wasn't some kind of out of balance something. but that's not a confirmation that you're in perimenopause. At the same time, I was working with a client last week who had all these sorts of labs, was coming to me. We're going through stool testing, blood testing, Dutch test, which is a urine test for hormones, and their estrogen and progesterone levels were like bottomed out in what the Dutch test considers to be postmenopausal ranges. This person, age-wise, you would not assume would be postmenopausal. And so we were going through their medications and going through other things. And they're like, oh, I'm on birth control. And I was like, whoa, hold the phone. First of all, here's a little PSA. If you're on hormonal birth control, don't waste your money to do a Dutch test, okay? Because what estrogen and progesterone, what is happening to them when you're on hormonal birth control is it's giving you, aside from when you're on the placebo pills, you're experiencing and being given the same level of hormones for those 3 weeks or however long your pack is, right? What that looks like on specifically the Dutch test and blood testing is that your hormones are going to be exactly the same the whole month. And with a Dutch test, you're doing 4 to 5 urine samples over a 24-hour period or over the 30-day period. But you definitely shouldn't be doing the 30-day one if you're on hormonal birth control, because what happens is it looks like on the Dutch test, your hormone levels, specifically estrogen, its metabolites, and progesterone, are going to be bottomed out. So this person had a suspicion that they were in menopause at minimum because their estrogen and progesterone levels were super low. Their testosterone was fine. But I was like, wait a minute, this is basically an invalid reading for these two, because if you're on hormones of any kind, that's obviously going to impact the levels that you're seeing on those types of tests. So just something to keep in mind. But on that, one of the ways, before we even get into all of the symptoms to look for and stuff, one of the ways that you can test to see where you are is by getting a blood test done. If you're not on a kind of hormonal birth control, you can go to your OBGYN, you can go to an endocrinologist, you can go to your primary care, and you can get some hormone testing done for estrogen, for progesterone. You can test if you're ovulating by doing FSH and LH. There's a couple of other things that you can do in there. And that can generally either give you a baseline or it can give you an idea of where you may be in what's called the menopause transition. However, it's important to do this around the same time in your cycle because your cycle fluctuates
I was just
every
about to say. Yeah.
yes, your cycle is fluctuating every day and your hormone levels are changing week to week if you're not on hormonal birth control or even the copper IUD. So it's important to get these labs done around the same time in your cycle each time, because otherwise, in the beginning of your cycle, it might look like, oh my God, my estrogen is so high. And then if 2 months later you go and you're in the second half of your cycle, you might be like, oh my God, my estrogen is so low. Those are both things that are supposed to be happening at that time in the cycle. So you want to get as close to even readings as you can, because otherwise your cycles are gonna look crazy.
Yeah, and you're not comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges.
Yes.
You want to look at what's going on. One of the things too is that our hormones shift so much that it's really important for you to get it done at the exact same time and also to understand where you are. So if you're someone who doesn't really know where you are in your cycle, this can be really confusing too and not really give you that much insight. I will say from personal experience, my regular practitioner wouldn't do a hormone check because they basically said, I don't have the expertise to do anything about it. You have to go to an OBGYN to get more detailed testing around it. That's another question that you can then ask. You can at least ask them to take a look at your testosterone or something just to see, but another lab to get as well. When you're looking into potential, is this perimenopause? Is this stress? Is this my thyroid? What is going on here? That it's really important to know that your thyroid stuff mimics perimenopause symptoms. Like we were saying originally, they're very similar in like the way that the presentation can come up. And so sometimes there can be an overlap with maybe a thyroid dysfunction or something like that. So it's really important for you to check into that too. If you are experiencing these things, you're getting targeted this stuff and you're wondering like, oh my gosh, maybe this is happening for me too. It's a good time to ask your practitioner to look at your TSH, your free T4, your free T3, any thyroid antibodies, things like that, and get like a full thyroid panel. Although sometimes that's a fight to get to, but
Well, I was going to say that's something that you're going to have to be insistent about, because a lot of the time when we as women get into our late 30s, early 40s, even 50s, like all over the place, they'll be like, oh, if you have gained weight, if you have these types of other perimenopause symptoms that we're going to go into, they may be like, oh, sure, we'll check your thyroid, but they'll only run one, maybe two markers if you're lucky.
oh,
And
yeah.
that's not enough to give us the full picture of, is this a primary thyroid issue, meaning is there an issue with the thyroid itself, or is it something else that is affecting the thyroid and causing it to underproduce, let's say, certain hormones, because the thyroid is extremely sensitive to everything that is going on in your body. And so if you are under, I don't know, massive forms of stress because the world is on fire and you also have all of your personal things going on, then you could have experience of what could be considered subclinical, aka it's not showing up, as out of range by the lab, what's called secondary hypothyroidism, which means there's not an issue with your thyroid proper, but there's an issue upstream that is causing the thyroid to almost impact its function in a way that is showing up in the body as hypothyroid type symptoms, even though there's not necessarily an issue with the thyroid gland.
Yeah. I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize and don't understand. And it makes it really confusing because, again, like I said, it's almost like you need a Venn diagram between the signs that you might be in it, various different things, and they all are intersecting, right? So, signs that you might be in perimenopause or having a thyroid issue or stress could also impact all these things. Could be irregular cycles, right? Is your cycle irregular now? Is it shorter, longer, heavier, lighter, or is it gone altogether? What's going on there? Is that perimenopause, stress, your thyroid? Is it PCOS? We don't know. Like we don't have enough information yet. But it is guidance and information for us to say, okay, here's the places that we can start to look about what might be impacting that. Am I having hot flashes and night sweats? Okay, what's going on with that? Am I postpartum? That's also something that can happen too. Like all of these different things can play into it. Am I having sleep disturbances? What's going on? Am I having increased stress and anxiety and mood swings? Am I having brain fog is another thing. Are there changes in my libido? Think about all of the different things that can impact your libido and all of the different places where it shows up, right? It's not just in perimenopause. We see that in thyroid stuff. We see that in stress stuff. We see that in PCOS. We see that in anything that has a downstream effect in our hormones. Any kind of weight fluctuations, things like that, things can be changing. Digestive changes, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, all of those can be linked to a number of different types of things that are going on. Joint pain, muscle stiffness, things like that, increased cravings, all that stuff can also be part of that too. And also, then again, if we're looking more in an anatomical standpoint, there also could be pelvic floor stuff happening or vaginal dryness, things like that could be impacting that and also could be part of perimenopause. But that's also stuff that we see postpartum. Did you have a kid 4 years ago and you never saw a pelvic floor PT and you're having this stuff and now you think that you have perimenopause? It might actually be the need for pelvic floor health. And so I think it's really important to play around with all of these different aspects and know how each of these are like all of the symptoms can mimic each other and can be seen in multiple different places. And I think anything that is hormone related or you think that's happening from a hormone perspective, I really loved how you said, Dana, about how paying attention to the downstream effect and like the like subclinical hypothyroidism. I think one of the things too that I always say and think about with my clients is how the body acts in hierarchy. If it's too busy running away from bears all day, aka your children, your rule, your responsibilities, your bills, the government takeover that we're like low key having right now, and like the stuff that's happening, all the stress that you're going through, a pandemic, all of the different stuff, we have to then think about the body works in hierarchy. And if it's too busy doing those things, it's not thinking to itself, now's a really great time to have our hormones functioning and be really fertile and like all of the different things because it's thinking about
We not safe.
we're not safe right now, right? And so it's really natural for women when we're going through stressful periods of time or stuff happening or there's a lot going on that we will have very clear hormone related symptoms associated with a lot of different health issues, I guess would be the best way of describing it, or different types of things that are coming up. So I think sometimes, and that's why I truly believe that those ads are validating, because you'll hear, oh my God, yes, like finally someone sees me. And it's yes, but this is fast reaching. And no, it's not likely that the subscription based hormone supplement is really the root of all of the support that you need. There's multi layers.
Right. And so that's something to bring up as well is a lot of these different hormone supplements that are on social media in particular, they do target the symptoms that you're experiencing. However, they're not targeting where those symptoms are coming from. And so here's where the confirmation bias can come in. Is say you take this hormone, whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, my symptoms are better. My cycles are more regular. I have more energy, whatever it is that you're experiencing, right? When you go off that supplement, if the symptoms come back, it's not because the supplement was fixing things. It's because the supplement was helping with the surface level symptoms that are going on as a result of something deeper that is happening. Whether that's the outside world, there's some kind of internal hormonal imbalance or trauma or so many other things that are going on. And so what we recommend is, one, start tracking your own data. So if you have a sneaking suspicion that something is going on, track your cycles, preferably somewhere that cannot be tracked itself. So, for example, we all used to track in little calendars, paper calendars, wherever you want to track it, right? Just be careful with your data, more important than ever, but track when your period starts. Track, if you really want to get into it, if you're looking for fertility things, track your cervical mucus. You can track that to see. You can track your basal body temperature. This is really getting into more fertility stuff, right? But track when your symptoms are happening throughout the cycle. So typically, if you experience premenstrual symptoms, so like PMS, right? So if you have breast tenderness, if you have headaches, if you have GI changes, if you have abdominal cramps, if you have any of the things that commonly happen pre your period starting, track when those are happening. Because sometimes you might notice that there are different deviations from your typical symptoms and when they're coming up. And that's helpful data to know, because if you make your way to a provider and you can give them concrete data of my cycles are getting wonky, right? This one was 30 days, this one was 45 days, this one's 55, and then we're back to 30. And then we have this, and then we have this. And I'm also experiencing a handful of the symptoms that Christina was talking about before. You can give them that concrete data and say, this is why I would like to get X, Y, and Z tested. And if for whatever reason they're not willing to test it, then it might be, if you really feel compelled to get that data, you're going to have to get it somewhere else. Because unless you can connect your provider with another provider that you're seeing that can then give them a valid reason or what they view as a valid reason to like, hey, we really need this testing, they might not run it for you. And so then you might need to go to a different practitioner, whether that's your OBGYN, endocrinologist, or something, and start to say, hey, here's the data that I have. I would love to get this done. This time can also be really frustrating because it feels like you're in limbo and it feels like you're constantly searching for answers. And sometimes people are not hearing you, or it feels like people are not listening to you. And that's why tons of people fall into the, oh, I'm just going to order that hormone supplement, because that's a lot easier than trying to find a new provider and trying to get some blood work done and me not knowing how to interpret this blood work and then probably trying to find another provider to interpret this blood work for me. And it's all just so confusing. I would rather just order this thing off of wherever.
And
That is way easier.
And if it helps you, I was actually going to say one of the things that I think is important to think about too is to decide on the degree in which you care. And sometimes when we're going into our practitioners and we're going down this road, does it really matter, or are we really looking for symptom management anyways? And so you can actually, I think that's what one of the most frustrating things sometimes with going to a practitioner is that they ignore symptom management. and are only looking for a diagnosis. And so I think it's really helpful to work with people who are going to help you with, yes, a diagnosis can be really helpful for getting me the care that I need. But then at the same time, sometimes it's pre diagnosis, but my symptoms are still very real. And we want to have symptom management happening at the same time. So, yes, it's important to know your data, know your information, understand what's going on, get in touch with your body, know all the things that are happening so that you can go with information and saying, no, I've been tracking this and my cycle's all over the place. Or that's at least enough information for them to say, oh, we should probably get you in with your OBGYN or an endocrinologist to get a little bit more extra data. Because that is odd. That's unusual to have that happen. And then for me, the other thing is what's really difficult, what's really hard is when you're stuck in this place, like you were saying, Dana, with this limbo aspect of things too. It's really hard because the information that's out there in and of itself, other than just like the supplement type stuff, it's eliminate this, do this protocol, do these exercises. This is the way you're going to manage all this stuff. Here's what you need to do. And that in and of itself is overwhelming. And then all of that stuff too stems from this obsession with our weight, feeling like we need to manage ourselves, we need to drink the fountain of youth, like we cannot age. There's like all of these things that go in there, and it triggers a lot, right? The targeting stuff is very triggering for women, or not maybe triggering is not the word, but like very emotionally manipulative because it taps into these parts of ourselves. Like, yes, I am in my 40s, but I still feel like young and desirable and fun, and I want to do stuff, and I want to have the energy to go and do stuff. Is this what it just means to be older? And feeling a little bit like that's not how I want to feel. And then that can make us become more emotionally attached to certain outcomes, more emotionally manipulated by ads and targets and things like that. And so for me, I think it's really important to get some base level education, understanding about what are the things that are at play. What are the different areas that could also be showing me these symptoms? And it might not just be this one thing. It might be all of these other things or something else entirely. And so I just think it's important to consider that. And then also to know, okay, I'm getting targeted this. Like, this is so clearly like something that I'm getting targeted. Usually you're getting targeted when you see the same ad or the same kind of version of ads and the same types of real
Over and
content
over.
over and over and over again. Oh, this is targeted. Yeah, this is what's happening.
This
And
is
then
who
like,
they think I am.
yes. And so it's like, no, TikTok's not going to diagnose you with perimenopause. It's not. Like, it's not going to do that. And so what do we do from here? What are the things that we do to support ourselves if we are having these symptoms? We don't really know what's going on and we want to get some answers. One, what Dana was saying. Two, start tracking your information, start getting some data so that you know what you're doing. Two, I think validating your symptoms. That is so like what you're feeling and what you're experiencing is something. Our body's always talking to us. And it can be really difficult and overwhelming when we have a lot going on. And then on top of it, we're feeling the ways that we're feeling too. And how do we how do we marry supporting, validating this, and also keeping ourselves from becoming obsessed and going off the walls and doing like thousands of different protocols and then doing all kinds of stuff and buying all kinds of different supplements, hoping that each one is going to manage each different symptom. Usually when this happens, it's usually a good time to put the credit card down, stop clicking on all those things, spend a little time going into Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni type stuff. Start distracting yourself with other things for a little while. Have some fun, relax a little bit. Don't be obsessed with these things, and then start to see where you're going from there. I'm just joking about getting distracted with Justin Baldoni. I just meant to
She
recalibrate
enjoys
your.
that deep dive currently, is what she's.
No, yes, but no, what I'm saying is that you can recalibrate your reels, so like your reels and your explore page and your targeted content to have that less pressure on yourself, because it does feel like when you're having something over and over again coming to you, it reinforces this belief over and over again. And really, we need to take a couple of steps back, relax a little bit, find out what's going on, gather the data, understand the information that's coming to us, and validate our symptoms, saying, yes, this is real and I can do something about it. And it doesn't have to be a 20-step program and $80 a month in this one supplement in order to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
what I think.
because perimenopause and menopause is marketing gold
Oh my
for
God.
the diet, supplement, and fitness industries. So I think we're going to have to I think our next episode is going to have to be diving into these like specific things that are getting marketed towards women who, whether they know or don't know, we're in that maybe I'm area, and talking about, okay, these things that are being marketed towards us specifically. We can go through some supplements. We can go through some, yes, there are diets specifically for us, at least they say they are. And then specific marketing around fitness and saying, oh, before when you were younger, it's so much easier for your body to manage its own weight and stuff. But now when you're going through this, it's so much harder. And so you need to try even harder and you need to do these things and you need to do all this extra stuff and you have to do all these protocols and you have to buy all these things and blah, blah, blah. And it's very fear mongering. And we've always been sick of the fear mongering. I'm sick of it to so many extra levels at this point because it's everywhere, right? I think our next episode, we're going to have to deep dive into some of the specific things that are coming up. We would love to hear from you all. What are some of the specific products or marketing messages or protocols or things that you have been saying? I have a couple in mind that we can go through, but to hear the specific ones from you all as well.
Definitely. I also think, too, one of the things that I would like to hear as well is not just the things that you're getting marketed, but also the questions that you have about it and what you want debunked and information that you have. Because I really think it'd be cool to do another episode that's non-diet approaches to perimenopause. Like, how can we take the information that maybe we're getting and be less obsessive about it? And then how do we support our system in a way that's actually going to help with these symptoms and make us feel a lot better? And so that you do feel like you're self-advocating, doing something for yourself, understanding how to support your body as you are going through a shift, if you are. Because whether it's perimenopause, stress, or your thyroid, or whatever it is that's going on, we want to support your body because of the symptoms that you're feeling. And that is true. What you're feeling is true. And so how do we support that in a way without feeling like you have to never have anything like like, I don't know, any, like, without removing any major food groups, being obsessed with counting foods, counting your protein, all of the stuff that we're seeing everywhere now.
Oh,
And so,
protein.
oh my God, right?
We need a deep dive on that too.
Everyone who's, am I getting enough protein? I'm like, since when do we all care about this so much? Eh. So I think, like, we need to go into a non-diet approach for perimenopause too, for people to understand. So if you are going through perimenopause, what can
Or
you
you think you
do?
might be, or you're being marketed that you are.
Mhm. How do we, one, decide whether or not you might be, or that you are, or that maybe you are in it and you have that clarity on where you are in your journey into menopause. And then you can then say, okay, for this stage of life where I am and how I'm feeling, here's how I can adequately support myself and understand what my body needs so I can respond to that. That's what I'd really love people to leave with.
Mm-hmm. And if you want the extended cut of this episode where we talked about some hilarious personal stories around the mental load and ADHD, you can check that out on Patreon this week.
Oh God, you're gonna post that?
Oh yeah, I'm totally going to post that.
Buckle up.
Oh, bye guys.